When you go from the 5, 6, and you go from this point of recognizing the importance of living by your pattern and having the patience to wait, then what you get to in the 26 is you get to the first line, a bird in the hand. You know, a bird in the hand is better than 2 in the bush. The pattern that you have is better than the pattern you think you deserve, or you think you can get, or you think you want. The 26 gate is the taming power of the great, and it's the gate of the egoist. It's a gate of memory. You know how to apply memory, and that doesn't mean it's truthful. Just how to use memory. How to use memory to be a transmitter. How to use memory to get information out to the tribe. This is the right angle cross of rulership. The 26, the 45, the 47, and the 22. Above the line it says, the maximization of the power of memory applied to the nurturing of continuity. Remember how much we discussed in the 32, the importance of continuity in the tribe. The importance of being able to have reliable economic structures so that everybody can be secure in their tribal life. And of course, we saw that the 26 is the gate of the salesman or saleswoman in that structure. They're the marketing ones. That's the capacity of the ego based on getting a fair equation of work and rest to be able to go out and keep the continuity going by continuing to sell the product or whatever. It's the gate of the trickster. It's the gate of great truth-telling and great lying. This is the cross of rulership. And as we know, our rulers tell us the truth or lie to us, depending on circumstances. And they think in lying to us that they're doing it for our benefit. First line, a bird in the hand. Neptune exalted, you know it's fuzzy. I have this fuzzy line. The ability to enjoy the dreams engendered by accomplishment in order to avoid the delusion of unlikely potential. The ego which transcends limitation through dreaming. Now look, what that means is that the 26 one who says, this is what I've accomplished. This is what I've accomplished. Base your assessment on me on what I have done, rather than base your assessment on me in terms of how my ego tries to convince you that I will do it for you. In other words, your reputation grows based on what you do and what you've done rather than what you promised to do. Line 2, the lessons of history. This ability to transmit to others. Obviously, the 26-2s don't know that. It's something that has to be seen in them. I tell all 26s that they should have a public life. All 26s should be going out there into the tribe and doing their work. They have a gift of being able to turn on the tribe. The thing is that the more secure they are within themselves, that power is just a glow and not a perversion of the essence or the truth of things. The Son exalted the energy and depth of reflection to learn from the past in anticipation of the future. The power of the ego to mature through experience takes a long time. The 26-2, if you meet a 26-2 and you're running a business and they come in the door, automatically you look in their window and say, wow, they could sell. But it doesn't mean they can. The 26-1, somebody like me, that's a natural capacity to be able to do that. But the second line is somebody who has to be trained to it. Have to be trained to that capacity to be able to transmit. In other words, they have to develop skills, crafts, whatever that case may be. And they learn from those experiences. Pluto in detriment, the urge to take action despite the evidence of history. The failure of the ego to respect experience. So many 26-2s, every time somebody says, you can sell this, keep on going along with that until the damn thing's a failure all the way down the line. They realize they can't do it. When I had my experience with the voice, when it was over, I have never been so down, so deep in the dark, so depressed, so melancholic in my entire life. And it was only about one thing. I didn't want to be a salesman for a voice. Yeah. I didn't want to do that. I'm a first line. It's lower trigram. I have 11 first lines. I'd like to mind my own business and just look at things in my own quiet way and forget about all that. I'm a 5-1. I have a 5 personality, but I only have 2 5s in my whole design. It's just something that, no choice. Right? So, the lessons of history. This lower trigram makes it very, very difficult to be able to transmit successfully to the tribe, because it's going to be dependent on the other. Some of my main associations with people that have helped me put human design out into the world, my original partner in Germany is a 44, Chaitanya was a 44, I got all kinds of 44s in my life. And it's out of that, and only out of that, that becomes possible. Influence. In the third line, trial and error. Obviously, you're going to have trial and error in your transmissions, and you're going to have mistakes in the way things are described, and you're going to have people who are often accused of being liars because they naturally break bonds. They promise you that they will do X, and then they break the bond of it, and they don't deliver. And of course, they suffer as well. The ability once prepared, and that's the whole thing. The ability once prepared to gather support. It takes a long time to be prepared. Egos are insecure. They're insecure because it's always up to them whether the will be expressed or not. And they're insecure as to whether they can deliver the will and get the reward. Always. It takes time for them to find security in their power. The Son exalted the authority to focus communal effort, the power of the ego to gather support. Now remember that the tribe loves a liar. They do. The tribe loves its liars. Its local, the local politician, They just like it. The bluster that comes with all that. It's after all the 26 that lets out the propaganda of the tribe. You know, we're the best tribe. We're better than the other tribe. So they gather support. Saturn in detriment, the leadership, while gathering support, will underestimate potential challenges. The ego is unable to recognize the challenge potential in others. That challenge potential is the gift of the 44 to be able to penetrate them. Money talks, bullshit walks. The 44 looks at the 26 and says, wait a minute. Excuse me. When you get to the upper trigram, you get to a different kind of capacity. This transpersonal capacity. The transpersonal in the 26 is a very powerful force. It allows them in the fourth line to externalize their transmission, but in externalizing their transmission, this is the first line that knows the other. And because they know the other, you get the line of censorship. One of these lines that's misunderstood. You see, what you censor is what will take away from the attractiveness of what you're going to transmit. I saw this on television the other night. They're selling this product to grow hair back on a guy's head. And, and this is the best. It's tribal, eh? This is the best. It's wonderful. They give you the statistics. 65% grow a few hairs. 70% grow a few more, whatever the case may be. And then at the end of that, they give the caution, right? Very quietly, with the music of the ad playing in the background. And what I caught was, if you're a pregnant woman, don't even touch it. Don't even touch it. Okay, if you're a 26-4, you leave that out. Because if you put that in, it's going to cost you sales. Now, of course, that can sound awful. It can also be wonderful. A little bit of sugar helps the medicine go down. So be clear about the nature of this censorship is that what it's doing is it's trying, based on its understanding of the other, to tailor the transmission to their needs. In the early days of No Choice and Human Design, so many people around me said, don't tell them. Censor that, will you? We'll tell them later. But if you tell them right now, they may not come. Well, fortunately, I'm not a 26-4. That is a gift, after all. It can be positive, it can be negative. But see it in its context. It's about tailoring the transmission so that the transmission will be successful. The alteration of memory through elimination. Pluto exalted. The ability through censorship to save the collectivity from itself. How nice. The power of the ego maintained through forgetting. Anytime I see somebody with 26-4, I tell them don't get into past life therapies. It's not good. Don't get into rebirthing. Leave all that stuff behind. They also tend to be forgetful. This is not something where they have to desperately go looking for what they forgot, because what they forgot helps them to get the transmission out. They forget that little detail that might screw up the transmission, so they just don't put it in. It's not their fault. Design is innocent. Saturn in detriment. The use of censorship to maintain the status quo, selective memory, and fear of unrestrained consequences. The power of the ego maintained through selective memory. I don't remember having a cigar. Or whatever. I'm really giving Bill a bad time. And I know his design. Poor bastard. The use of censorship to maintain the status quo is that remember something about the nature of the tribe is that the tribe doesn't like the breakup of continuity. You know, there's a lot of people in this country who would prefer that they never heard about Darwin and evolution. And if they had had their way, they would have made sure that that wasn't included because after all, we already have our way and we have our way of seeing things and we have our story and we are our tribe and we don't want that. So, you know, all of a sudden there's a change in the law somewhere that gives an advantage to people and nobody bothers to let them know. You know, government does that all the time. You know, they pass certain kinds of legislation that may be of value to certain individuals, but they certainly don't go out of their way to make sure all those individuals know that. And of course, that's what this is all about. You know, this is trying to maintain the status quo, trying to keep everything consistent. I mean, I had this process with my son, putting him into school here, and of course they ask you whether your child's been inoculated or not. You know, so if you're really into the status quo in your fourth line, you don't tell me that there's a way to get around that. You know, even if the form is there, you don't tell me. And if you're not like that, then of course you say, look, there is a way that you can get around that. So this maintaining of the status quo is a tribal defensive mechanism. In the last 7 minutes and 30 seconds of this fourth line, we have a change in the cross. It's an interesting change because what replaces the 22 and the 47 is the 36 and the 6. So we have the 26, 45, 6, and 36, and we have the juxtaposition cross of the trickster. They can really fuck you. Literally. After all, it's the 36 gate. It's the gate of sexual penetration. And of course, the way that they do that with you is that they trick you. They trick you by not telling you everything. They trick you by coordinating the information. Now look, you can get real upset with that if you like. Well, it's okay with me if you get upset with it. But of course, that trickiness is often absolutely essential because the only way to move the tribe is to trick them. Because they're stuck in their conservative way. And the only way you're going to move them is to trick them, is to juice them up, is to make sure that they get the best. And the moment one person in the tribe gets it, everybody else has to. The left angle cross of confrontation. Through the fifth line, adaptability. The understanding, by the way, this is a line that is for human design, as it turns out. The understanding of mechanics and the application of energy to achieve maximum potential. The great salesperson can read their client like a book. They know exactly how to seduce them. That's the fifth line gift. They know exactly where their soft spot is. They know exactly. But they can only do it in those moments when it's revealed. And of course, those are moments of crisis. Those are moments when the fifth line abilities are available. The power of memory which maximizes the potential of the ego to attract others. But it's the understanding of mechanics. How the damn thing's going to work. How the other works. To understand the mechanics of seducing others. Venus in detriment of resistance and dissatisfaction with basic changes, when basic changes to nature are necessary. That is a resistance of the egoist to adaptation. If you don't understand the mechanics, if you don't understand how the thing works, you're going to have to change your way. Nothing bothers the ego and the tribe more than having to change their way. They hate it. Unless changing that way can turn out to be the best for them. And it's not like they trust that just on the surface. Authority, the sixth line. The 26 has great authority over the tribe. It is one of the tribe's main breadwinners. And as such has the respect and envy of the tribe when it is productive. And because it is an ego gate, it is also offensive to the rest of the tribe. The natural attainment of influence justified by the correctness of actions. You've heard that a lot now in lines. Correctness of actions. Right action. All of this goes back to our understanding of what it is to be ourselves. To enter into things correctly. To enter into our processes according to our definition and type and authority. Only then can you reach that point of attained influence, because it's out of the actions. If you trick somebody, seduce them into something that turns out to be good for them, they really appreciate it. You tricky devil, but that was great. They love it. They would never do it themselves. You ask 1,000 people, which one of them would actually want to be a salesperson? On their own, marketing something. It's not like 1,000 hands are going to go up in the air. This is not everybody's dream. This is a real heavy trip because it's all ego. All willpower. And the demands on that ego and willpower. The Son exalted, the embodiment of reason and purpose that passes the test of time. The strong ego whose influence is justified by the correctness of their actions. It always goes back to the same thing. I can say that I know something now as a 26. Like human design, without in the least bit feeling uncomfortable about my ego. It's one of the things that is so important, is that when you're living out your own nature, you do what is of value to you. That your principles are correct because you are correct. And remember, these principles are all about what you have to work with in this life, is what you care about and you respect yourself. Moon in detriment attains authority as a symbol and focus, but not necessarily as the true embodiment. This is the fool on the hill. The constitutional monarch, stripped of real power, but still the symbol of the continuity of authority. Now they sit on the hill. They go through their third line process. They go through trying to influence others. They go through this thing of trying to sell others. And then they go up on the hill. And the first thing they notice is who can sell what and who is a principled transmitter. This is what we're looking for. The most common thing that you find in the transmission within a tribe is propaganda. Remember the 16:6, gullibility. So easy for them to believe in all that propaganda when they're young. The propaganda that they put out of their own ego. I'm the best, I can do this, I can do that. I can do this for you and I can do that for you. And the ego is only healthy when what it has in its hand as proof of its efforts and value are established. Then it's healthy. It's never healthy with its promise. So one of the beauties of the 26.6 is that it sits up there and it sees whose promise can really be of value to the tribe. Remember that the 6 can always confirm everybody else's direction by confirming the power of the universalization, by saying, yes, that's correct. Those mechanics are correct. The understanding of the other is correct. In order for the ego to operate properly, it must have its equation of work and rest. When you look at the 4 ego gates, or you look at the channels that can define to the ego, remember that these channels are always conditioned by that criterion, that for work there must be rest, and that the arc of the ego is to gain more rest for less work. If you want to have a successful salesman or saleswoman working for you, start them off at the basic minimum that you can with them and reward them step by step. That brings success. And it creates a stable ego. But it must have its rest. It must have its time off. That's why there's so much pressure here. That's why they will lie. They will mostly lie in order to get more rest. I can't come into work today, I don't feel good. It's not true. But they need more rest because their ego isn't ready to put out the willpower. If you don't understand that as an employer, as a lover, or as a friend, that's infuriating. And when you confront them, it's not like you're confronting the mind, you're confronting the ego. It'll just infuriate you even more. At the moment that it's clear that authority can be established through correctness, that the transmitter gains its authority through the correctness of its transmission, then you can start looking at what to transmit. Ideas, as an example, which is next in the wheel.